Hey, okay, let's move on. Finish up chapter 3. We'll start with Heidegger's criticism of Descartes' conception of world. So Descartes theorizes that there are three different substances: God, mind, and matter, but he doesn't go into any discussion over how the being of these three substances differ in any way. And that's something that's missing in Descartes' analysis. And in fact, he says that the meaning of these substances is undiscoverable by us. So we're kind of at an impasse already from an ontological standpoint. Descartes declares that Dasein can gain access to the being of world only through knowing. And in the sense of the kind of knowledge that we find in mathematics and physics, science. So Heidegger's criticism of this is that, well, Descartes has never actually allows the world to reveal itself to him. Rather, he dictates to it its being. And this is based on the idea of being as a constant objective presence. So he hasn't opened himself phenomenologically to what the world is, and rather he's kind of taken a position already before even bothering to apprehend the world, and then so he ends up kind of dictating to it what its being is, rather than embracing it as it is and allowing it to reveal itself to him, which is precisely what phenomenology does for Heidegger. So Descartes predefines being ontologically as this constant objective presence, and mathematical knowledge is perfectly suited to describe that. And so everything kind of dovetails nicely for Descartes, but Heidegger thinks we're missing something in that picture. So beings do not show themselves through our senses. This is another kind of angle of criticism of Heidegger's. They appear as, in that phenomenological sense, as worldliness, which we've been looking at. So they don't just appear to us through our senses. We don't just apprehend them kind of physically. There's a deeper level. But this is the only way that Descartes seeks to describe them. So Descartes turned the question of the world into nothing more than the thingliness of nature as an inner-worldly being, which is initially accessible. So he just reduces the world to a collection of objectively present things. And on top of this, compounding the problem, he also understands the being of Dasein, our human being, as the same kind of being as things. So again, there's we've gone off the tracks completely with this way of thinking, reducing the being of human beings to nothing more than just being things in the world, inner worldly things with objective presence. So the next section is Spatiality, and this is quite an interesting section. Another kind of ontological perspective on space, I guess. So we're not talking about space. Space is different for Heidegger. We're talking about spatiality. So there are two ways that Heidegger discusses this. The first is the spatiality of inner worldly things at hand. So that the spatiality of things in the world, things which are ready to hand, or things, useful things we've been calling them. So first of all, they have the character of nearness, and this is nothing to do with distance, with physical distance, as measured by, say, a ruler or something. You know, it's nothing to do with that kind of scientific distance, but it's determined by the handling and the use that Dasein circumspectly calculates. Again, not calculates in a scientific sense, but calculates with a practical goal in mind, for a practical purpose. Again, as things appear in that referential totality, always, you know, related to other things in a web which is ultimately for doing something or achieving something. So they have that characterization of nearness, and they also appear in what Heidegger calls a region. And the way he explains this is by saying the world is divided into regions in which inner-worldly things belong. And again, this is not that mathematicized kind of Cartesian space, but is again based on significance, that referential totality. And so regions are not first formed by things present together, just objectively present things positioned in a particular place. Rather, they are always already at hand in individual places. The places themselves are assigned to what is at hand in the circumspection of taking care of things. So this circumspection, this practical engagement with things comes first, and it's from that the region is derived. So just to put that another way, the referential totality of significance orders things and places. So it's that ontological understanding of the world as worldliness, which comes first, which is prior. So regions remain undiscovered in circumspect, heedful dealings, but only reveal themselves in the deficient mode of taking care of conspicuousness. Exactly as we talked about in that last video, we normally don't notice, we're not aware of regions. It's only when something goes wrong, something is missing, something isn't where it's supposed to be, that suddenly region becomes apparent to us and becomes something we're explicitly aware of. So Heidegger says, when we do not find something in its place, the region of that place often becomes explicitly accessible as such for the first time. And the example he gives in the book, I think, is a saw, which for a carpenter, all of Heidegger's examples revolve around like carpentry or something, I don't know. So anyway, there's a saw for sawing through wood. It hangs somewhere on the wall of the carpenter's garage or shed, and we don't usually notice that place. That we're not usually explicitly focused or aware of that place until the saw isn't there, and we go looking for it, and suddenly we realize that place where the saw is supposed to be is a place, and it's the place where the saw isn't. And so it's only when something is missing that the region becomes apparent. And another good example of region Heidegger gives is the sun moving across the sky. So you have sunrise, noon, sunset. The sun is at a different place in the sky at each of these times, and each of these places are indicators of the regions contained in them. So there's something of importance there the physical places are indicators of the regions contained in them. So the regions are not just those physical places. They are, it's that deeper. It gets to the meaning behind them, how those places fit into the worldliness of the world, how they fit into that referential totality, and the things that belong in them, how they fit into that referential totality. So it all comes back to this idea of the world is not just a physical. It's not just a thing. It's not just a collection of physical things. It's more than that. It's deeper than that. And so these places, these physical places, indicators of the regions in them, and the region is an ontological descriptor for the ontic term place. And so that's kind of the key point. There are two things going on here, two ways of viewing the world. There's that ontological, deeper ontological way, that phenomenological view, and the scientific view, the ontic view, the physical view. And so that distinction kind of lies at the heart of everything we're talking about here. And the other spatiality, the other aspect of spatiality Heidegger talks about is being in the world, the spatiality of being in the world, or Dasein. And so again, this is not, it doesn't mean being found in a particular position in space, which is relates to things that are objectively present, nor is it related to being at hand in a place, because that's the being of, it's the spatiality of useful things. So rather, Dasein is in the world in the sense of a familiar and heedful dealing with the beings encountered. Hence, Dasein is spatial on the basis of being in. And basically, I mean, that's saying nothing more really than just saying that Dasein is spatial in the sense, in that kind of, within that referential totality, within that meaningful, coherent picture of the world that we have. It's in that sense that Dasein is spatial. And the spatiality of being in is described by two terms, de-distancing and directionality. So de-distancing is a circumspect approaching. Not obviously in the sense of moving closer physically, but in the sense of bringing something near, as in supplying, having, or having at hand. So this de-distancing, it's. I mean, I think it's reasonably straightforward. It's not a physical thing. It's just how accessible things are for us in within the context of meaningful engagement with things in the course of trying to accomplish something or achieve some kind of goal or complete a project. That's what de-distancing is, how accessible something is in that sense, not in a physical sense. And an interesting feature of this is that things that are measurably or physically nearest to us tend to be the things which are furthest from us spatially, in this ontological sense. They're furthest from us spatially. And the example that Heidegger gives is a pair of glasses. So glasses which you wear right in front of your eyes, on your nose, are so close to us physically. I mean, there's nothing closer to us. But they've been de-distanced so much. They have they're so close to us from a practical perspective. When we're engaged in projects and tasks, when we're busy engaging with the world, they're so close to us that they're actually further from us than the things that we're looking at. So the glasses that have just become so what Heidegger's saying, de-distanced. They've become so close to us in this circumspect, heedful engagement with the world that we don't even notice them anymore. It's like they're not even there. In the same way we talked about last video, if you remember, the pen. The pen is as an extension of your hand. It's further away from you than the words that you're writing on the page. You're so engaged with the pen that you kind of overlook it. It becomes a part of you. And it's the same thing here. The glasses have just been de-distanced so much. The pen has been de-distanced so much. It's so close in this circumspect, heedful engagement that you're involved in that it doesn't even register. And so that's what de-distancing is. It's this being so close to you for in a useful, practical sense. So de-distancing is not an attribute of Dasein. That's another key point here. It's an existential. It's one of those characteristics which characterizes. It's one of those features which characterizes. It's an ontological feature rather than an ontic one. So it's an existential, which means that, as I said, it's not an attribute. It means that Dasein is de-distancing. It's more primordial, I think, is the word Heidegger would use. It's more fundamental, foundational to Dasein's being. We aren't just things that de-distance. It's not something we can say of ourselves that we possess or that we have, a quality that we have. It's what we are. It's who we are. It goes right to the being of us. There is no Dasein without de-distancing, and there is no de-distancing without Dasein. It's that close to us. It's that foundational. And the second dimension, the second aspect of this is directionality. And basically, this is, I'm just going to read this. This is the way that every bringing near has always taken a direction in a region beforehand from which what is de-distanced approaches, so that it can be discovered with regard to its place. And my take on that is essentially, it's Heidegger's talking about directions: left, right, up, down, maybe in front of, behind, and saying that these directions are all grounded in this deeper ontological understanding of Dasein as directionality. So for want of a better word, the scientific kind of descriptors, left, right, and front, they're all grounded in this deeper sense of directionality, which is a way that Dasein exists. It's a way that Dasein is in the world. And the bottom line, I think, is that it's saying that Dasein doesn't live in a mathematicized Cartesian physical space, but in a lived one, in an experienced space. And it's that gives these scientific or crude physical terms meaning. And that kind of segues into the last section here, which is space. So we've looked at spatiality, and now we're looking at space, which is that scientific, physical, ordinary everyday understanding of location or the world, space. It's the everyday understanding of space. So space becomes accessible to cognition only on the basis of spatiality. So we've just looked at that level of how everything is connected in a referential totality, and we're engaged in projects, and this kind of web of meaning that we that it is part of the worldliness of the world. That one aspect of that is that spatiality, which is how things, how near they are to us, how useful they are to us when we're engaged with them. It's because of that this commonplace physical understanding of space comes to be. So space is grounded in this deeper understanding, which Heidegger calls spatiality. So space is neither in the subject, nor is the world in space. So there's two kind of things there. Space is neither in the subject. So this is kind of a refutation of idealism, right? It's not just kind of in your head, if you like. It's not an arbitrary thing that the subject imposes on the world. Nor is the world in space. So the world of things, I guess, if you want to use that term, it's not in space. Space it's not a container in which the world is. Rather, space is in the world, since it is being in the world, i.e. Dasein, the being of Dasein, that has disclosed space. So space is in the world because it is that world, in the sense of being in the world, which has disclosed space in the first place. At the risk of talking too much about this, Dasein, it's because of Dasein and the being of Dasein that space exists in the first place. And because of that, space as this concept is in the world, is in our world, is in the world of Dasein, because there is no other world. The world is a part of this being of Dasein. It's not created by it, but there is no world apart from Dasein. So again, it's not this kind of arbitrary thing. It's not just like, oh, so it's whatever, the world's whatever I imagine it to be. It's not that. It's this idea that the world is only a world because Dasein I don't want to use the word create, but it's only what it is because Dasein takes a position on it, because Dasein sees meaning in it. Everything that the world is, it gets that, whatever you think, whatever aspect you're looking at, it gets that from Dasein. So no Dasein, no world. But it doesn't mean that in an egocentric way, or in it, like we're the center of the universe, we're the most important. It's nothing like that. It's just that there is no world without a perceiver, without a conscious awareness to, again, it may be misleading to say, but to kind of impose order on it. And so because of that, space is this concept. It's in the world, but only because its being in the world, Dasein, which has disclosed space in the first place. So it's kind of, the world is prior to space. I guess that's what I'm angling at. I guess that's what I want to say. The world is prior to space, which is the worldliness of the world. This more fundamental understanding of the world. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense. So because of this, Dasein isn't in space. Dasein is spatial in a primordial sense. For all of those reasons I just said, I think Dasein is fundamentally spatial. We're not in space. It's the two just come together. It's what we are. It's our being. It's our essence. Although don't take that word in the wrong way. It's just who we are. It's what we are. It's the being. It's our being, which is spatial. And it's only because Dasein is spatial in this sense that space discloses itself as a priori. Now this is really interesting. I find this quite an insightful thing to say. It's only because Dasein is spatial in this deep sense that we're not in space. Space isn't a thing separate from us. We are spatial. And it's because of this that space appears to us as a priori, as something which exists prior to experience, something which must be before we can have experience. And that's the way space appears to us. It appears as this fundamental construct, right? You can't have anything without it. So it appears as a priori, but it only appears that way because we are space. Dasein is space. And so in a way you kind of can't get behind that because it's already in you. It's already who we are. So we when we try and look past space to see, what precedes space, what's prior to space, we can't get there. We can't see anything. But it's not because space is fundamental and foundational. It's because we are, and it's because space is us. Because Dasein is spatiality, which is a really cool thing to say, I think. So the last thing I wanted to do is just give a kind of summary of this. And that goes like this. As being in the world, Dasein has always already discovered a world. There cannot be a subject without a world, or a perspectiveless perspective. That's kind of self-explanatory, I guess. There's no world. There is no world which we discover, we come to. So there's no us first and then we discover this world. It's the deeper connection than that, where there is no kind of what's the word I'm looking for? That Cartesian, free-floating, independent mind, which then can come to the world and discover it. That mind, what I'm calling mind here, is Dasein, and that Dasein and the world kind of come together. There is no separation of the two. You can't have a world without Dasein, and you can't have Dasein without the world. That's at least on Heidegger's, as far as Heidegger's thought goes. So this discovering of the world, this discovering founded in the worldliness of the world, the being of the world, is the freeing of beings for a totality of relevance. Everything we've just looked at. This freeing is grounded in significance and is equiprimordially, one of those classic Heideggerian terms, equiprimordially letting something be relevant in a region which de-distances and gives direction. It is a freeing of the spatial belongingness of things at hand. And hopefully that has made some kind of sense. So I think I'm going to finish up there, and I'll see you next time I manage to get a video done. So we'll move on with being in time then. Thank you. See ya.